No one could believe their eyes. Not even her family. The courtroom was a whirlwind of tension and whispers, the entire room crowded with individuals willing to do anything to see what would happen. The massive oak doors, adorned with complex patterns, towered over all who entered, as if warning that today, secrets long hidden would once and for all be dragged out of the shadows. The atmosphere was heavy with tension, nearly palpable, with the weight of years of silent treachery. Individuals fidgeted uncomfortably in their chairs, casting sidelong glances at one another, sharing speculative whispers. The muted hum of their whispers built to a strained buzz, a low thrum that vibrated off the soaring ceilings. Each eye in the room, from the camera-wielding journalists to the judge's sharp gaze, was upon the focal point, Christine Brown. Christine was seated in the defendant's chair, her posture impeccable, her hands folded neatly in front of her, giving no indication of the tempest that was soon to break. She had on a crisp, sophisticated dress, hair beautifully done, lips made up a precise color of beige, radiating an atmosphere of tranquil sophistication. But beneath the tranquility, behind the tranquil smile, hid a secret so black, so wily, that it could splinter to pieces the very groundwork of faith her family and society had put in her. Her gaze swept the courtroom with the ease of one who was used to being watched, but never seen until today. Christine had built a spotless public record, kind, devoted, dependable. Her friends and neighbors sang her praises as a gracious hostess, a generous friend, an impeccable tastemaker. But in secret, Christine led a double life. What really went on was breathtaking. Year after year, there had been countless mysterious robberies of wealthy estates, irreplaceable jewelry had been stolen without a trace, and precious heirlooms had vanished from safekeeping. No one had ever thought to suspect her. She was the ultimate wolf in sheep's clothing, disguising herself right under their noses and masterminding one of the most elaborate theft operations ever. And now, the charade was on the verge of collapsing. The atmosphere in the room was tense as the prosecutors stood up. The sound of their footsteps on the shiny wooden floor seemed almost purposeful, drawing all eyes to them. The prosecutor's gaze, piercing and unyielding, fixed on Christine. The quiet in the court was oppressive, as if the air itself had been drained away, leaving behind the expectation of an oncoming tempest. Christine Brown, the prosecutor started, voice firm but filled with accusation. During the past 10 years, you masterminded one of the most sophisticated and planned robbery schemes ever seen. You betrayed your own family, but not just your community. You concealed yourself in plain sight, lying to everyone who trusted you, enriching your pockets at the expense of what never belonged to you. The words strike like a hammer on iron. Gasps came from around the courtroom, swift and piercing, shattering the strained quiet like glass. Individuals gripped the chairs in front of them, some forward slouching, eyes open wide, hearts racing. Christine's relatives, sitting mere rows away, suspended in mid-breath. Eyes and faces went white as color drained away, eyes opening wide with shock. The mother who had brought her up, the sisters who had confided every secret, the friends who had told their most intimate fears and aspirations, all were stunned into silence. How could Christine, the girl they had laughed and cried with, trusted to an infinite degree, be so painstakingly, conscientiously dishonest? The prosecutor went on, walking deliberately before the jury, allowing each phrase to settle in. You manipulated circumstances, took advantage of trust, and deliberately plotted each theft so suspicion would never attach to you. For years, everyone thought Christine Brown a paragon of virtue. They were mistaken. Every pilfered item, every unexplained vanishing, every act of deception points directly to you. Whispers broke out in the courtroom once more, this time laced with anger and fear. Some onlookers placed their hands over their mouths, unable to express shock. Others shared glances of disbelief, shaking their heads as if not believing what they saw before them. The atmosphere was thicker now, filled with a combination of betrayal, surprise and the bitter flavor of justice, about to face an expert manipulator. Christine's face was still, a thin facade of composure, only thinly disguising the tempest raging inside. Her fingers occasionally flickered on her lap, betraying the faintest whisper of strain. She breathed in deeply, almost subliminal, as if priming herself to face the onslaught of words. But there was no fright in her eyes, only a calculating quietness, as if she had known this moment was coming the whole time, as if she had practiced all her possible defenses in the depths of her mind. The courtroom onlookers, however, could not suppress their feelings. Tears welled in some eyes, mirroring the sense of betrayal that was personal, and as if Christine had pilfered not just treasures, but a part of everyone's sense of security and trust. The murmurs grew again, this time louder, filling the room with outrage and disbelief. Even the judge, a figure normally immune to theatrics, leaned forward ever so slightly, eyebrows furrowed. The serious seriousness of the charges bore down, and Christine's calm exterior for the first time looked almost vulnerable, under the load of the evidence and the emotional reactions against her. Along the way, the prosecutor continued, voice rising slightly. You used your charm and your wit to con those closest to you. You used love and loyalty to further your tricks. Each elaborate theft, each untraceable transfer, each deceitful word, it was all on purpose. The effect was instantaneous. Christine's family gasped a second time, some putting hands over their mouths, others shaking their heads in shocked incredulity. The mother sat paralyzed, eyes blank, heart hurting with the betrayal of a child she had loved without reserve. Sisters clasped hands, huddling together, pale faces reflecting shock. Friends who had regarded Christine as their best friend now stared, unable to equate the woman they knew with the mastermind criminal presented before them. Christine's lips were pressed together, and for an instant her self-control was complete. But the air hung heavy, heavy with the import of accusation and discovery, each passing second a never-ending age. The sheer fact of what she had done, the lives she had interrupted, the faith she had breached, the incalculable hours of subterfuge, loomed above her like a thundercloud about to explode. The prosecutor's words were calculated, each of them cutting through the suspense. Today, the truth is revealed. Every step you planned, every stolen loot, every deception you perpetrated has been revealed. And now, justice will confront the woman who camouflaged herself in smiles and polite greetings, who misled the world behind a cloak of trust. Christine Brown, this court will witness the true you, your deceitfulness, your temerity, and the extent of your betrayal. A collective shiver coursed through the room. The murmurs were growing louder, the onlookers craning in, unable to turn away. They all wished to witness her response, to see if the world's greatest thief could endure the force of the world finally catching up to her. And Christine Brown, serene though irreparably shaken, stood before the room with an unflinching air of defiance, aware that the storm she had reaped all these years had at last come home to roost. I believed I knew you, but I was mistaken. The courtroom hushed, the air thick with anticipation. Every eye was focused on the witness stand, where a relative, Christine's most intimate friend, someone who once trusted her blindly, shivered, her hand grasping the podium for balance. Their face was white, and the tears that had already started streaming down their face were a combination of heartbreak, shock, and rage. The room was still, sensing that what was being said could break the fragile threads of trust that this family had once held in common. For years the witness started, her voice trembling. I believed you when you said you were serving the community, that you were working hard, that everything you did, it was for us. I never suspected, never imagined, that all that was behind that smile, plotting, scheming, stealing what belonged to us. The words fell like a sledgehammer. Onlookers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Whispers circulated through the courtroom, but the judge's gavel brought them to an abrupt halt, allowing the gravity of the accusation to take hold. The air was charged. All eyes were on Christine, waiting for a reaction. Would she react with guilt, defiance, or would she hold to the frosty serenity she had honed over years of practice? The witness took a shaky breath and went on, the voice getting firmer despite the tears. Each family heirloom that went missing, each irreplaceable piece of jewelry that went missing, each estate that was burglarized while we slept soundly. Christine, it was you. You deceived us. You exploited our love and trust as instruments for your plans. You were a specter in our lives, taking and taking, but then playing the role of our guardian. The courtroom broke out in hushed gasps, the whispers growing louder once more. Some covered their mouths in shock. Others leaned in, fascinated by the blatant audacity of the charges. The room was a theater of unbridled emotion, and Christine sat at its center, a tranquil figure amidst the chaos. "Do you understand what you've done?" the witness asked, their voice shaking with emotion. "You were not merely stealing things. You were stealing our peace, our sense of security, our faith in what was true. You made us question everything. Our memories, our choices, even our love for you. And all of this you did for yourself." Christine's face stayed deliberately inscrutable, but a glimmer of something, a hint of fear, possibly or temporary regret, darted across her eyes for an instant. The witnesses went on, relating events in minute detail. They told of stolen family heirlooms, pilfered donations from charity campaigns, and treasures that disappeared in the name of errands or assisting neighbors. Each tale brought Christine, not only as a thief, but as a master manipulator, a wise ingenious betrayer, masked with a flawless facade. "I entrusted you with everything," the witness went on, voice cracking now, "and you used that trust to betray us. Every time we laughed together, every time we cried together, every secret we shared, you were scheming, deceiving, concealing. Christine, why? How could you do this to the people who loved you most?" The courtroom fell silent once more, as if the room itself were holding its breath, waiting for Christine to answer. Her family members were clearly shaken. Her mother's hands trembled as she clutched the pew in front of her, her knuckles white. Sisters looked away, unwilling to meet Christine's gaze, their feelings churning between anger and sorrow. Friends who had once thought of Christine as their closest friend, now sat petrified, their mouths hanging slightly open, the weight of her deception hitting them. "We didn't just lose possessions," the witness said, gathering strength through the tears. "We lost our faith in you. We lost the comfort of believing in someone who loved us unconditionally. You turned every moment of trust into a weapon against us. Every word you spoke, every gesture of care, every act of kindness. It was a lie, Christine. A lie crafted to hide your crimes." The words cut like daggers, each word punching invisible wounds into the air. The jury sat forward, every syllable hanging from their lips, and the judge's eyes narrowed, drinking in the testimony, with grave seriousness. Christine's poise started to crack. Her fingers shook ever so slightly on the arm of her chair. Her jaw clenched. She pursed her lips as if she was hard-pressed not to speak because she knew that any words would add to her incrimination. The witness felt the gravity of the moment and took a breath, drawing strength from the depths of their suffering. "I recall my first realization that something was amiss," they explained. "A necklace went missing from my dresser drawer. I thought perhaps I had lost it. Then a painting went missing from our living room. And each time I accused you, you smiled at me, reassured me, and turned suspicion elsewhere. You discredited me, made me think I was going crazy, made me think that I was imagining things. Christine, all those years, it was you. You were the one responsible for everything." A wave of emotion washed through the courtroom. Some openly wept. Others sat stiff, looking at Christine like a stranger. The tension and disbelief and raw heartbreak hung in the air. Even the judge leaned forward, listening intently, sensing the weight of the testimony unfolding. "You took away more than things, Christine," the witness went on, voice rising now, with sorrow and outrage. "You took away our trust. You took away our innocence. You made us doubt every relationship, every word, every promise. And why? For money? For control? For the rush of lying?" Christine finally inched forward slightly in her chair, her gaze darting toward the witness. For the first time her cool, controlled facade appeared brittle. One tear warred with escaping, but she blinked it away, determined not to appear vulnerable. Her breathing was even, but those who observed closely could detect the subtlest tremor of tension coursing through her frame. The witness's last statement pierced the room like a knife, bitter and indelible. "I loved you, Christine. I trusted you, and you betrayed me, my family, and everyone who cared about you. Today, the world will see the real Christine Brown, not the woman we thought we knew, but the master thief who hid behind our love. A silence settled in the courtroom. All present were impacted by those words. The testimony not only exposed the facts of the crimes, but also laid open the emotional destruction Christine left behind. The witnesses, reporters, and jurors were all as one in shocked silence. They could not grasp the combination of guile, betrayal, and heartbreak laid out before them. Christine sat frozen, eyes fixed straight ahead, as if gazing at the floor could somehow protect her from the storm. But the storm had already struck. Her family's incredulity, her town's outrage, and the irrefutable word of someone she had loved and trusted, had left wounds that would never heal. The intricately woven facade of innocence was disintegrating, brick by brick, under the unyielding impact of fact. The witness descended from the stand, their shoulders bowed in weariness and sorrow, aware that they had unveiled the entire burden of Christine's treachery. The courtroom stood still, the silence between their words hanging around them like smoke, a somber reminder that no fraud, however deft, could last eternally. Christine Brown, the woman who had deceived everybody for years, now stood in the full glare of her double life. And within that courtroom, the fine line between trust and betrayal had been crossed beyond recall, with everybody left to pick up the pieces of the emotional wreckage she had left in her wake. And here it is, the proof nobody could hide. The courtroom went quiet, as the prosecutor, a woman of unflappable authority, advanced with a thick, bulging file. Its heft was symbolic, as if it bore the entire weight of Christine Brown's years of lying. Cameras flashed and scribbled notes recorded every step, but nobody risked breathing too loudly. All eyes in the room were fixed on the drama unfolding. Christine sat in the defendant's chair, calm, but there was a flash, a small flick of her fingers, that gave away the tempest raging beneath. The prosecutor set the file down gingerly on the desk, opening it reluctantly, as if relishing the moment. The courtroom could sense the tension mount. With each page turned, out came the photographs of pilfered jewelry, fraudulent receipts, surveillance videos, and electronic transaction history that traced an elaborate pattern of deceit straight back to Christine. The evidence was daunting, irrefutable, carefully arranged, a masterful presentation of detective work meant to bear the truth utterly. Consider carefully, all of you, the prosecutor declared, their words ringing out in the quiet room. Each lost piece, each mysterious disappearance, each act of dishonesty, points squarely to Christine Brown. There is no doubt about this. She planned these thefts with care and guile. Gasps again filled the courtroom. People in the audience leaned forward, unable to look away. Relatives who had trusted Christine for decades held onto each other's hands, their knuckles locked in white. Her mom covered her face with her palms, shivering uncontrollably. Friends and sisters gazed in shock, unable to connect the Christine they had known with the master criminal. The evidence now depicted. The prosecutor brandished a picture of a diamond necklace, previously thought to have been lost forever from a family estate. This necklace, they stated, went missing 5 years ago. Christine was spotted around the estate the day it disappeared. Surveillance footage recently unearthed catches her going in and out without suspicion. Every lead, every clue, every effort to mislead investigators, all orchestrated by her. The courtroom was charged. Each sentence, each item of evidence, bore down, weighing on the hearts and minds of all. Reporters wrote furiously, capturing the stunning revelations. The jury leaned forward, quiet, taking in the relentless truth. Even the judge, normally a pillar of stoic strength, seemed visibly shaken by the detail and temerity of Christine's schemes. But that's not everything. The prosecutor went on, switching to another stack of documents. These are documents of stolen receipts, transactions under misnomers, and bank accounts set up to launder plundered riches. Christine didn't merely steal, she gamed systems, abused confidence, and covered her bases with a degree of guile that's almost unparalleled. Spreadsheets and photographs streaked across the courtroom like lightning, revealing another piece of Christine's double life with each one. Cash, antiques, jewelry, even pieces of valuable art had disappeared over the years in mysterious fashion, but now it all came down to names, dates, and details pointing back to her. The whispers in the courtroom increased to a low roar of dismay and amazement. The prosecutor's tone lowered, measured, near whisper, so that each word had authority. Christine Brown is guilty of more than stealing. She is guilty of lying, of manipulating, and of deceiving on a scale that has broken up families and left communities reeling in shock. The evidence you will see today is not just proof. It is the disintegration of a life founded on deceit. Christine at last spoke, her tone strained but calm. I, I can explain. Her words were greeted in silence, as if the court itself refused any motive she might proffer. Every shred of evidence had been painstakingly laid out, with no scope for denial. The tranquil mask she had worn for years was finally starting to erode under the pressure of irrefutable evidence. Her fingers drummed impatiently on her lap, and a slight shudder ran through her shoulders. The tempest had come, and there was no refuge to shelter under. The prosecutor went on, striding slowly, allowing the room to catch the full weight of the surprise. Each theft was carefully planned. Each alibi was constructed. Every act of generosity, every display of devotion, every moment of trust, Christine used them all for her own purposes. And today, we stand here to make sure justice is done. The relative who had accused her previously stood with tears streaming down his face, his heart shattered and vindicated. This is what I feared, he whispered quietly. All along, I knew something was wrong. Now the truth is undeniable. The prosecutor then showed a specifically jarring piece of evidence. A secret safe holding valuables stolen from several families, found in Christine's personal storage. The room gasped as the camera footage displayed Christine opening it with a key that only she had. The evidence was physical, unshakable, and heartbreaking. This, the prosecutor exclaimed, voice rising with passion, is the culmination of years of meticulous planning and deception. A master thief who worked under the cover of family, friendship, and trust. Today, Christine Brown stands revealed, not only as a criminal, but as a woman who destroyed the lives of those who trusted her most. The courtroom burst into whispers, some weeping openly, others shaking their heads in shock. The jury remained in stunned silence, drinking in the weight of the evidence. Christine's family, who had been her greatest defenders, now gazed at her with a combination of sadness, outrage, and bewilderment. The woman they had loved, trusted, and admired for so long was unmasked as an astute manipulator, a criminal genius who had moved among them undiscovered. Even the audience in the gallery were touched. Murmurs of shock spread like wildfire. How could she? Someone whispered. All those years, and nobody had any idea. Christine sat immobile, gaze leveled straight ahead, the stoic facade she had cultivated for decades intact, for the moment. But below it her mind whirled, debating, tabulating, questioning whether she could manage to salvage even a fragment of dignity or alibi. The evidence had cornered her, and the courtroom became a sphere where only reality would reign. The prosecutor slammed the file shut, the sound ringing out across the courtroom. There was silence, thick, stifling, and complete. All present felt the weight of what had been uncovered. Christine Brown, the woman who had been untouchable, was now completely exposed. The evidence had spoken in a louder voice than any testimony, louder than any plea. The judge leaned forward, his eyes narrowing, voice even but unyielding. The facts brought to light today are powerful and irrefutable. The court shall now ponder the seriousness of these revelations as we proceed. Christine Brown sat immobile, the burden of years of lies bearing down on her shoulders. Her serenity, her calculated calm, had outlasted examination for decades. But the tide was turning. The facts, painstakingly compiled, revealed a truth she could no longer conceal. Each stolen object, each falsified record, each act of treachery had been recorded, revealing a truth that could not be concealed. The courtroom had seen more than mere legal proceedings. It had seen a delicately built life of deceptions fall apart before the eyes of those that had trusted her most. And as the hushed whispers and gasps echoed across the gallery, it was obvious. Christine Brown, thief extraordinaire, had finally been caught out, and there was no going back. I can't believe this. She was one of us. The courtroom seemed to have become a maelstrom of raw emotion. Every muffled gasp, every suppressed sob, every quivering hand was a symphony of heartbreak that no one present could help but notice. Christine Brown's family sat transfixed, some gaping stupidly, others with tears streaming down their cheeks. The revelation that the woman they had loved, trusted and celebrated for decades, had been a master thief, struck harder than any ruling could. Her mother covered her face in her hands, shoulders racked with sobs. All those years of blind love, of nights without sleep, fretting over Christine's future, of tears and laughter shared, all of it seemed to be broken in one moment. The hurt surrounded her, slicing the space like a silent knife. Her siblings looked at each other in anguish, holding each other's hands for solace, their pale faces shocked. Some could hardly speak a word aloud. Others, struggling not to lose their anger, had their fists clamped so tightly they went white at the knuckles. "How could she do this to us?" one sister whispered, speaking so softly, she was almost lost in the thick silence. All these years, all the trust, gone. The courtroom was heavy with tension, the kind that made the very air feel suffocating. Friends who had once considered Christine their closest ally looked on in disbelief, unable to reconcile the Christine they knew with the criminal mastermind revealed before them. Every memory, every shared secret, suddenly felt tainted. Each smile she had given, every comforting hug, every reassuring word, now appeared as part of a calculated facade designed to manipulate and deceive. Even the gallery viewers were not immune. Murmurs and whispers ran through the room, combining disbelief with wonder at the care with which Christine had committed her crimes. Reporters glared at each other in shock, frantically writing to record every reaction. Cameras snapped, recording every tear, every intake of breath, every wince from Christine herself. The courtroom was no longer merely where justice was served. It was now a theater for heartbreak, for deception, for the destruction of a life founded on falseness. Christine herself sat frozen, her demeanor cracking for the first time in weeks. Her hands quivered against her lap, her shoulders tensed as if preparing to withstand the burden of each accusing gaze in the room. For years she had honed the art of deceit, manipulating those around her, taking advantage of trust, living in the open while being hidden. But today, the truth bore down like an unrelenting wave, merciless and unforgiving. Her glance flicked to her family members, her mother's pained face, her siblings' turned away eyes, the naked pain on their faces, and for the first time, Christine's tranquil mouth cracked. A single tear hovered on her eyelid, and she blinked it away, refusing to be weak. But the emotional destruction in the room was there, hanging in the air, and no mask could hold up against the strength of such shared grief. "Why, Christine?" a brother finally was able to whisper, voice shaking with rage. "Why betray us so? Why take what is not yours? What is our family's, our trust, our lives?" The question remained, unspoken, suspended in the air like a festering wound that would not heal. The courtroom waited, breathlessly, as if it would provide a response, but there was none. Christine's silence spoke louder than any words, a chilling admission of guilt that words alone could never express. Friends who had previously stood up for her now gazed at her suspiciously and in disappointment. Each smile, each comforting act, each laugh shared now held the sting of treachery. The basis of their relationships had been shaken to the core, and the vulnerability that remained was both a shock and deeply hurtful. Even the judge, a man who had seen many cases, was visibly moved by the raw emotion in front of them. The order of the courtroom, the chilly rationality of law, had been replaced by the human cost of betrayal. It was no longer mere stolen property, forged signatures, or secret accounts. It was shattered hearts, destroyed trust, and lives irrevocably changed. Christine's family struggled to mesh what they had known with the reality exposed before their eyes. They had celebrated holidays, birthdays, and life milestones with her, believing she loved and cared for them as much as they did her. All those memories were now tainted, the happiness marred by the magnitude of her betrayal. Some of the family members held one another close, trying to find solace in their collective sorrow. The others looked away, not wanting to see the individual they had loved change before them into a stranger. She stole more than things,
one brother said to another, voice thick with grief. She stole our trust, our peace, our sense that family matters. Tears fell unashamedly, and the room was filled with the quiet, almost unheard sounds of sobs. The impact of Christine's decisions was not limited to the courtroom. It extended to the farthest reaches of her family life, to every friend she had ever manipulated, to every individual who had ever trusted her. The results of her deceit were boundless, extending far beyond legal consequences into the world of emotional destruction.
Christine herself looked nearly besieged by the depth of feeling surrounding her. She breathed steadily, but her eyes were revealing a storm inside. She felt each accusation, each tear, each hissed word of betrayal weighing on her. For the first time, the great thief was aware that no amount of guile, no brilliant disguise could protect her from the cost of being human. The prosecutor, seeing the emotional damage, permitted a moment of silence to fill the courtroom, allowing the enormity of the destruction to settle. All observers, all relatives, all jurors felt the suffocating weight of what Christine had accomplished. The thefts were not simply offenses of material worth, they were offenses against love, trust, and human relationship. One of the siblings, unable to keep from expressing their rage, finally yelled across the courtroom, "How could you do this to us? To all those who loved you." Christine winced at the loudness of the words, the first observable reaction of fright or guilt since the trial started. However, she said nothing, her silence more eloquent than any words. And in the silence, the courtroom was struck with the full weight of her duplicity. The hollow, the betrayal, the heartache. The courtroom was full of onlookers now openly crying, reporters videoing every second, and the jurors taking in the emotional wreckage as well as the factual content. The emotional damage was done. A woman who had once gained trust, adoration, and love had turned into a representative of deception and manipulation, and had left all those around her to try to understand the devastation she had caused. As the session came to a close, the judge scanned the courtroom, voice measured but weighed with recognition. The court acknowledges the serious emotional effect of this case on the victims and the families. Let it be recorded that outside of the legal process, pain and betrayal endured here are real and enduring. Christine was taken back to her seat, head dropped slightly, as the full impact of her actions weighed upon her. The courtroom was still heavy with emotion, the atmosphere strained. All the family members sat in shocked silence, some fighting back tears, others crying openly, all trying to understand the woman they had known and the criminal that stood before them. The emotional damage was total. Trust had been lost, bonds severed, and hearts left wounded. Even as the court case wore on, the psychological and emotional wounds Christine had inflicted would last forever. And in that courtroom, surrounded by testimony, family, and strangers all, it was painfully obvious Christine Brown's crimes were not just theft. They were the shattering of faith, love, and the innocence of those who believed in her most. The decision is certain. Justice will be served. The gavel came down with a crash that resonated through the courtroom, shushing all whispers, all gasps, all paper shuffling. The sound was absolute, like the slamming shut of a book that had kept years of secrets between its covers. For Christine Brown, this was the culmination of her meticulously built facade, her decades of manipulation, and her deceptive existence. The crushing weight of the collective attention of the courtroom descended on her, relentless and merciless. Christine sat in her chair, fists clenched in her lap, jaw clenched, eyes locked ahead. For the first time, the serene, calculating facade she had presented for years crackled visibly. Her breathing was calm, but her shoulders quivered slightly, betraying the tempest that seethed inside. All the individuals present in the room, the jury, the judge, the relatives, the onlookers, felt the tension, anticipating the declaration that would decide her destiny. The judge, a towering figure of authority who had witnessed every word, every tear, and every response in the courtroom, leaned forward. His voice was measured, slow, and weighed with seriousness. Christine Brown, the judge started, after due examination of the evidence, testimony, and all points in this case, it is the finding of this court that you are guilty on all charges. A collective gasp rose through the courtroom. Others grasped their chests in horror. Others let their heads drop, overcome by the irreversibility of the words. Christine's family, already emotionally broken by the disclosures, now had to confront the agonizing reality that justice had not only been pursued, but attained. Her mother's hands shook furiously, holding on to the pew in front of her for support. Her siblings gazed, some crying openly, others staring vacantly, attempting to understand the truth that the woman they had placed their confidence in was a convicted offender. The judge went on, their words deliberate but firm. Your behavior throughout the years has wrought irremediable harm, not merely to property, but to relationships, trust, and the psychological health of those around you. The court is aware of the seriousness of your offenses and the harm they have wrought on your victims. Christine's expression was still stoic, but the act of composure was faltering. Her gaze fluttered toward her family, perhaps hoping to catch a glimpse of sympathy. But she saw only betrayal, heartbreak, and shock. The same people who had been her most trusted friends now regarded her as if she were an imposter, a stranger, and not the loved one they once knew. The courtroom fell silent for a moment, weighed down by the heavy verdict. Reporters recorded each response, their cameras snapping as if to seal forever the emotional ruin in the room. Witnessing spectators breathed quietly, exchanging their incredulity, while others just looked frozen in disbelief at the sheer nerve of Christine's offenses and the emotional carnage left behind. The judge's voice echoed across the silence once more forceful this time. Christine Brown, the law will now decide your sentence. You will suffer the consequences of your actions to the fullest extent. May this be a warning to the world that no crime, however cleverly planned, can ever go undetected. As the proceedings went on, Christine was escorted out of the courtroom in handcuffs. Her movements were slow but burdened by the weight of her circumstances. She had her head held high, but those who saw her could notice the faint tremble in her fingers and the passing glances of remorse in her eyes. The great thief who had managed to deceive everyone for so long was now finally caught. Her liberty lost, but more significantly, her grip on the story broken. Her relatives sat, their faces a mixture of pain, relief, and residual incredulity. Some hugged one another tightly, finding strength in mutual sorrow. Others sat still, their minds elsewhere, struggling to come to terms with the emotional trauma that Christine's fraud had inflicted. The courtroom, which had been a forum of procedure and order, was now a drama of heartache, betrayal, and the salutary might of truth. Outside of the courtroom, the tale went viral. Media and social media networks were abuzz with shock, onlookers enthralled with the story of Christine Brown, the woman who lived among them, a thieving genius who walked undetected amidst them. The masses watched in a combination of fascination and horror, each piece of information analyzed and debated. Her web of deception, diligently chronicled and now completely revealed, became an object lesson in trust, lies, and the price of deception. Even as the legal case came to a close, the emotional fallout continued to reverberate. Christine's family, although gaining some closure in the outcome, would never be the same again from the emotional damage caused by her behavior. Relationships had been broken, trust destroyed, and hearts left irreparably damaged. Justice had been served in the courtroom, but the cost in human terms was incalculable. Christine herself, led away under the watchful eyes of law enforcement, faced the reality of a life irrevocably changed. The carefully constructed life she had built, the networks of deception she had woven over the years, had crumbled. Every lie, every stolen item, every manipulated moment had been exposed, leaving her to confront the consequences of her actions. At the trial, her kin and onlookers felt the gravity of the moment. The emotional toll was evident, a reminder that although justice could be meted out in a legal context, the wounds of betrayal went deeper. The court could have convicted Christine Brown, but the real price of what she had done, the heartache, the shattered trust, and the emotional turmoil was a burden that would last for years to come. The judge's last words resounded in the courtroom as the hearing concluded. Let it be known that justice has been served, but the price of betrayal goes beyond the courtroom. Trust once lost cannot quickly be regained, and the wounds given today will have lasting scars. As the gavel came down for the final time, the courtroom slowly emptied, each of those touched by the proceedings in some way. The reporters filed out with their tales, the onlookers with their astonishment, and the family with their sorrow. Christine Brown, thief and liar, had been convicted and sentenced, but the psychic damage would linger, a constant reminder of the strength of betrayal and the steep price of dishonesty. Even after the courtroom doors had shut, the Christine Brown saga continued to haunt. It was more than a theft, a narrative of human psychology, manipulation, and how one individual's actions could taint the lives of those they had trusted the most. Justice was finally meted out, but the heartbreak, the shock, and the shattered trust resonated far beyond the walls of the courtroom. Trust, a sibling spoke softly, voice shaking, is the most difficult thing to restore once shattered. And she broke ours entirely. The courtroom, which was now vacated except for a handful of officials, bore the burden of that reality. Christine Brown had been revealed, found guilty, and punished, but the emotional debris she left behind lingered, a testament to the destructive power of betrayal and a tale that would not quickly fade.